Okay, so hi everyone to today's second session of computational physics KSS. Today we would be covering ordinary differential equations. So this is one area I'm pretty sure all of you are already familiar with, and you are also familiar that it is not always simple to solve an ordinary differential equation, even though it's called an ordinary equation. Even the most simplest systems can often turn to be complicated. Good thing for us, we have a very extensive framework for mathematically developing numerical methods for ordinary differential equations, and that is exactly what I will be showing you. I'll share my screen now. Okay. If my screen is visible, someone please confirm.
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this is the most basic form of an ordinary differential equation. That is dx over dt is equals to f of x comma t. Okay, so in a lot of places you will see the notation dy by dx and x comma y. I prefer to use x and t because again we are learning about computational physics, and position and time are some of the most common variables that are used, and uh, we will be learning about a couple of systems today, and there also you will see that these are the more common variables that are used. Okay, so what does this tell you? This tells you that we there is something, there's a variable x which is a function of t. Okay, and I need to find this function. Okay, and it tells me that when I take the derivative of x with respect to t, it gives me this function, two variable function. Let's take a couple of cases for this thing. So let's take this equals to f of t. Solution becomes very easy. It is just x of t is equals to integral f of t dt. Okay, and if you've been given an initial condition, you can also find this value c. Okay. Similarly, if this is just a function of x, then you can wait. You can proceed something like this via integration. Okay. This would be a little bit more complicated because you would have to integrate this whole thing, find x, and then find x in terms of t. But this is also pretty doable. This was the second case. Okay. And this is pretty much all that there can be. This it can also be a what do you call product of say f of x and g of t. In that case, we can again rearrange, integrate. Everything else stays exactly the same. So you might be thinking, since this is a workshop on numerical methods, why are we discussing continuous integration? Because continuous integration is practically what we are trying to achieve here. Okay, we want to find x as a function of t, and that is through continuous integration. So we are just going to do that, but discretely, rather than having it be a continuous process. Um, so let's look at the most easiest equation, E equals to minus lambda times n. Can someone unmute and answer where they've seen this equation?
Say first order
First order
nuclear
kinetics.
react.
No, I'm saying where they have seen the. It's a first order linear differential equation, yes,
Physics,
but where?
radioactive decay.
Nuclear react
Yeah,
nuclear decay. Yeah, the
yeah,
reactivity.
yeah, that is correct. Nuclear radioactivity. And you guys, I'm pretty sure you know the solution to this very well. It is n of t n naught 1 minus e raised to power minus lambda t. Okay, so we know the solution to this equation pretty well. So why not use this solution to this equation to verify what we can do with numerical methods? Okay, so we are going to use this as a verifiable function, and as you know, this function one second. Okay. Yeah, this function is something like this. Okay. Yeah. So, wait, is this correct? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it goes. Yeah, it cuts it. This function goes something like this. This is our time. This is our number of particles n, and this value is n naught. Okay, so this function decays exponentially. That is the nature of radioactive decay. Now let's look a little, take a look at how we can actually approach to what approach can we use to solve this kind of a problem. So let's get back to our previous notation because I find it much simpler to use. F of x. Okay. Now let's take it only as a function of x because in most physical
I
phenomena.
had a doubt.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Go
if we
ahead.
substitute t equal to 0, n of 0, the
Yeah.
value will tend to 0, no?
Okay. Fine. I
It's the
think
other
I
way, it's
made
an
a mistake.
increasing curve.
It's yeah. This is an increasing curve. One second. Give me 1 second.
It will be just n naught into e power minus lambda t.
Yeah. 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 Give me 1 second. Yeah. Okay. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So okay. So basically, my point is this sort of equation will always give you an exponential function. What kind of exponential function, whether increasing, decreasing, that will depend on this parameter lambda and your initial condition. Okay. So yeah, here we have this thing. Then okay, we will go back to our previous notation. Uh, Now I want to. This is linear. That is, this is just n here. I want to develop this for a general uh, function f. So for that, let's do one thing. Let's take a closer look at this derivative. What is the derivative? Can someone tell me?
Sorry.
Okay.
In what sense?
What is a derivative mathematically?
It's the slope of the tangent.
Yeah, slope of
Is
the
the
tangent. Okay. It is the slope of the it is the slope of the tangent. What but so okay, so I will give an example what I'm trying to ask here. Suppose I have this kind of graph. Okay. And you have 2 points. Okay, so how do we exactly find this derivative? We take the value here, we take the value here. Okay, and we keep getting them closer and closer to each other till they tend to 0. Okay, that way we will get a line here which becomes 1 second. Yeah, we will get a line here that becomes a tangent. Forgive my drawing.
I
It's
have a answer for your question, but it's different to the one which was answered.
okay.
Derivative of value is the value of the y-axis, which is given when the value of the x-axis, the value which is taken in the x-axis tends to 0, or which is brought upon very closely.
It is the value of the y-axis. Okay. Small change here. It is the value of the change in the y coordinate. Okay. You have
Yeah.
to think about. Yeah. So in that case, yeah, you're correct. So either way, with either definition, we come to one conclusion. That is x of t plus uh, t plus delta t minus x of t over delta t. Limit as delta t approaches 0. This is derivative. I'm pretty sure all of you are familiar with this. This is the derivative using first principles. Okay, now let's take a look at something else. Yeah. Okay, so if this is the exact derivative, what is the most intuitive way that I have of taking an approximation? The most intuitive way would be to just drop the limit. This is approximately equal to dx by dt. Okay, where and we have to make sure delta t has to be small. Okay, if delta t is not small, then the whole thing sort of falls apart. Not exactly it's still an approximation, but it's a very inaccurate approximation. So, and you will see that delta t need not be like 10 to the power minus 6 or something. It can even be 0.1 and it'll still give us a pretty good approximation of the function. Okay. So yeah, so this is something like this. Now what I will do, this time step delta t. Okay, this has basically now we have basically cut down our time axis. So if we have okay, position and time axis, we have cut down our time axis into discrete portions. Okay, each of size delta t. And each of these change for any curve, each of these when represents the change in the time. Okay, and this quantity represents the rate of change of the value that we are trying to find. I'm sure this is very basic stuff. All of you are extremely familiar with it.
I have a doubt. Can you
Yeah.
explain the the delta t is very much less than 0?
Okay. So okay, if we talk about the derivative itself, the derivative is taken such that the delta t tends to 0. Okay, that is we are trying to bring these 2 points very close to each other. Okay, this is delta t here. In this case, this is delta t. So we are trying, so this tends to 0. So in this case, what we are going to do, we are going to approximate it such that this is approximately equals to this when delta t is, it doesn't tend to 0, but it is very small than 0. Okay, it
Wait,
basically,
how is something very much less than 0?
That is a heuristic argument. I can't tell you how something is very small than 0. I don't know. For you, some 0.1 can be close to 0. For me, 0.001 can be close to 0. So for some reason, 10 from
No,
someone
no,
10
no,
raised to
no.
negative 24 can be close to 0.
Yeah, but
So
here it is given that it is less than 0. Very much less than 0. It's not closer to, right? So
I think you should have written delta t less than 1. So it could have been
oh, okay,
approximate.
fine. Yeah, that.
yeah,
That is
Okay,
also
sorry.
a
That is
small.
my. You could have just said that, no? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's my bad. I wrote 0 instead of 1 here. Uh, okay. Yeah, delta t is much less than 1. So yeah, that is what we're talking about. So delta t here again, we can also specify some like this thing, but we don't specify it like this because usually it is taken to be a positive time step. Okay. Um, so so now we can discretize this entire thing. This is what discretization means. Xn plus 1 minus xn over delta t. Okay, this is approximately equals to dx over dt. Okay, and here xn plus 1 basically means x at t plus delta t, and xn means x at time t. Okay, so the nth what do you call the nth term of this x that we are trying to find, that corresponds to n at some time t. Okay, or rather it corresponds to x at some time tn. Okay, so the nth time this thing, it corresponds to xn. Similarly, this is also corresponds to xn plus delta t. Okay, so xn plus 1 basically means you have some x at some time tn plus what do you call a discretization constant here. It's not called a discretization constant actually, but let's just call it that heuristically. Okay, so now for the entire equation we can write something like this: xn plus 1 minus xn over delta t. Okay, f of xn. Okay, now why have I taken f of xn here? It can be any, actually I don't have to take f of xn, I can even take f of xn plus 1. Okay, and that is something that really depends on what you're trying to solve. Some equations will give for some equations this will give a better approximation, for some equations this will give a better approximation. Okay, and both of these are referred to as forward and backward discretizations. Okay, or forward and backward Euler methods. Euler methods. Okay. So my entire recursive formula becomes something like this: xn plus, and just for the sake of my convenience, I will take delta t as h. Since it's a constant, I will take it as h. H times f of xn, or f of xn plus 1. I am going to take the backward one here. If you take the forward one, it for linear systems it's simple, but for non-linear systems it leads to a little issue sometimes. So it's better to take the backward one if you don't know what you're exactly going to be dealing with. And this becomes the very, very basic discretization technique of first order ordinary differential equations. Now let's do one thing. Let's take it as linear. What does linear mean? What is a linear function? A times x. This is a linear function. That is it. If this is a linear function, then this thing simplifies even further. This becomes a times xn, and so this whole thing becomes 1 plus a h times xn. Okay, and this thing actually simplifies our job even further. How does it do that? Because xn I can write as 1 plus ah times 1 plus ah times xn minus 1. Did everybody understand what was done here?
Yes.
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 So ultimately my n plus 1th this thing, my n plus 1th approximation becomes, and you can see that this is like this is basically your corresponds to an exponential function. Okay, how? For if we take this our h to go to 0 and our h to go to 0, you can see that this whole thing becomes an exponential. Okay, that is, you can get that via Taylor series expansion. That is a little bit more you can Taylor series expand it and see it, or take a direct limit using your L'Hopital rule or something, but that is basically what this is saying. So this is easy to see in in case of a linear function, but we don't really want to do this every time, right? Because every function is not linear. Hardly ever, like very few systems are linear, and this will this is a very cute approximation that we got here. Directly just put in n and we will get the answer. Doesn't work like this. So we are going to be dealing with this actually. Okay. Now let's go back to our code and see what we have done. And this is going to be the basic template for all numerical methods codes you write. So, okay, so numerical methods is a much more broader term. You use it to find values of functions. You use it to fit curves. You use it to find differential. You use it to find integrals. A lot of stuff. Here we are using one specific part of numerical method, that is differential equation solving for computational physics. So in computational physics, this is the biggest use that numerical methods have. Okay, let's move on. So like I showed you yesterday, we import the necessary libraries, that is NumPy, for our array calculation, Matplotlib for our data visualization, and math for mathematical operations. And we will define a function f. This is the same as the function f that we have used here. For right now, I've just taken it as minus x, that is a linear function. Okay, now try to see this code very carefully. Here I've taken the step size. Okay, let's start out with the smallest step size. Okay, I've taken the step size to 0.1. Number of iterations would be 100. Okay, that is the number of times you do this calculation. Okay, you start with n equals 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, you go till 100. Similarly, this is the number of time. This is an array of time steps. Okay, and why have I taken this array? Because if I multiply this with h, I will get the the discrete times, like t1, t2, t3, t4 of all the points I'm finding x at. Okay. Okay, yeah, I'm trying to find x at. So this is my initial value, that my x0 is 1. So as you know, for any differential equation, you must be given for first order equation, you must be given some one value of the function at some point to find the constant. If that value is given at t equals 0, it has a special name. It's called an initial value. If it is given at t equals infinity, it has a special name. It's called a final value. Okay, and later on in session 4, when we deal with basic partial differential equations, we will see that when it is given on the boundary of space, okay, some maybe the ends of a rod or maybe the sides of a cube, it's called a boundary condition. Anyways, moving on. And we have initialized an array here, where we have just put the initial value. Now we'll see why I've taken this, an array of all the times and all array of all the positions calculated. Okay. So again, our basic loop for I in range IT. This is the same as this equation. This is the same as our this equation. Then I will append this value x1, the new value that I've calculated, to this array, this x array again. Okay, and I will update my initial value to this. Why am I updating it? Because why am I updating it? Because it's simpler this way. Basically, I will calculate x1, and then whatever value that is, using that I will calculate the next value. That is precisely what this is. From here you can calculate x1. Here right now you only know x0. You can only calculate x1. If you try to calculate x2, there's no point. Okay. You can calculate x1 from here. Then from that you can calculate x2. From there you can calculate x3 and so on. Okay. So that is why we update it. Okay, and now after this whole loop has run, we have a time array, we have a position array, and we will plot both of them. What happens when you plot both of them? Okay, you can see that as expected, I am getting a declining curve as I wanted. Okay, how it is for radioactivity. You have some, here I've taken the initial value to be 1, you can also take it as n naught or whatever value you want to give, and it will decline down to 0 eventually. Okay, what will happen if I increase the number of iterations? You can see that we are increasing the number of iterations. That means we are increasing the time for which we are viewing the entire process. Okay, as you can see now the time is 100. Okay, so the transient time that we saw of the graph falling, it looks much steeper to us now, but it is not steeper. It is exactly the same. It is, we are just zooming out a little bit. You can think of it as zooming out. And if you increase it further, again this this gets even slight. Okay, okay, sorry about that. Yeah. Okay, so forget the iteration. Now what will happen if I decrease the step size? Decreasing the step size basically has the opposite effect of zooming in. Okay, why does it have that opposite effect? Because it becomes more and more accurate. Okay, see, now we are back to where we started from. Okay, so the number of iterations have the effect of zooming out, and the number of and the reducing the step size has the effect of zooming in. Why? Since it is becoming, why is it becoming more accurate? Because we are cutting down our time vector into even smaller parts. Okay, and such that it will, so if within 1 second, if we had 10 divisions first, then 0.01 means 100 divisions, 0.001 means 1000 divisions. So it is becoming more and more precise. So this is, you have to fix your, these are some, parameters that you need to fix so that, your, uh, the solution that you're getting is presentable, or, enough data can be extracted from it. Sometimes you need, this H also corresponds directly to your error. It is usually always related to your error. But in different ways depending on the kind of equation and solving technique you have. But H always influences the error. Okay, so make sure to, a good way is to do it via trial and error. If you can actually get a mathematical expression for the error, even better. I'm not going to cover error resolution here because that is a whole different topic in itself. Okay, so this was the basic template of numerical solver. Now let's move on to something a little bit more complicated. Let's move on to SHM. Now SHM, again, I'm very sure all of you are more than enough familiar for. Okay, wait, before moving on to SHM, I want to show you something. Yeah, so here I had taken the value of my function as -x. What will happen if I take it as something else? Will it work? It should, because since we derived a general expression. It does work. If you try to integrate it, you will see that this will give you some sort of an increasing function. Okay, and okay, wait. Yeah, so again, I'm going to decrease the step size a little bit. No, that won't work. Yeah, so this will give you some sort of an increasing function. And in fact, if I want to make it a little bit more complicated, suppose I give it, I made it cosec x. And here you will see, you will get a graph with a lot of discontinuities. Okay, it's continuous in some portions. It has some very discontinuous and shock prone portions, then it's just blowing up to some value at some point. So these sort of solutions are common in various fields. Where you talk about quantum mechanics or you talk about fluid mechanics, these sort of discontinuous and you can think of these as disturbed solutions are very common. And numerical, if you try to uh, get a solution of this using your by solving it, it will become much more complicated. Okay, here it's just better to just you know put it in and get the solution. Okay. Okay, now let's move on to SG. Okay, so this is the equation of your simple harmonic oscillator. Okay, now how do we solve this equation? We can't just discretize it as we did before, because uh, you know because this thing is not a linear derivative. We can try discretizing in some other way, and I'm pretty sure you guys will understand how and why I'm discretizing it in this particular way. Can anybody explain why I did this? Why I discretized it in such a arbitrary manner, or what may seem arbitrary if you're not aware? Anybody? Okay,
Because
this is
you may have to differentiate it twice. So
yeah, so if you try going to the first principles again, and finding the second derivative in terms of the in terms of delta t, you will get something similar to similar to this. Okay, where h is your delta t. Okay, this is obviously a good enough approximation. A better way to do this is something like this actually. Now, what is this equation really telling us? This equation is telling us that this xn is influenced, okay, by its own value. It is influenced by the value after it, and it is influenced by the value before it. Okay, that is exactly what this xn is telling us. Okay, and that is precisely what happens in a double derivative. Okay, what does a double derivative signifies? It signifies the curvature of curvature of any function. Okay, and the curvature of any function is influenced by the curvature of any function is influenced by the points. Yeah, the curvature of any functions is influenced by the points surrounding it, or rather the slope of the point surrounding it. Okay, since it is a derivative of the derivative. So that is this sort of fits with our theoretical definition of the second derivative. But this is not useful. In fact, this is absolutely useless to me. Why is that? Anybody? Because this requires me to have knowledge of x0 and x1. Okay. Now the knowledge of x0 is pretty easy. It's the initial condition that at some time t where the oscillator is at. Okay, that is pretty simple to find, and it's nothing that great. But this value is in physics, it is useless. This x1. because x1 is what we want to calculate. Okay, and you know, having the value of x1 at some arbitrary time, okay, just fixes our you know, doesn't let us manipulate our this what do you call the time step parameter very well. Okay, so you want to not have this sort of a discretization, because you know it's sort of not, it's not working for us. Then how do you proceed? Okay, let's think of it in this way. We know that the rate of change of position is velocity. What is the rate of change of velocity? Acceleration, or d squared x over dt. Okay, and that is precisely what this is. Okay, so if I take these two equations, dx over dt is equals to v, and dv over dt minus omega squared x. Okay, now this becomes a system of linear equations. Why? So like your system of algebraic linear equations, you have seen that you have two equations, equation 1, equation 2. Okay, and you have two variables. So this becomes a system of linear differential equations, and I can actually very well apply what I learned in the one equation to here. How do I do that? I can discretize the first equation to be like this, and I can discretize the second equation to be something like this. Yeah. So this becomes my system of equations, and okay, another way of writing velocity is actually x dot, which is what I usually prefer and what is you will find in books. So keep in mind here, just for your understanding, I put it as v. Okay, so this is my system of you know, linear differential equations. And I can very easily write it in code now. And you will notice I have put here as put the heading as naive algorithm. It will be very clear as to why in a few moments. Okay, here I have set my omega angular frequency as 1, step size 0.01, iterations to be 1000. Okay, let's bring down the step size in my iteration for now. Similarly, again, I have declared an array, you know, iteration array, a time step array, the initial position. Why this is useful? This is precisely why this discretization is useful, because we know the initial position and we can know the initial velocity. It is very easy to know the initial velocity of something, and that is precisely what we are exploiting here. Now this is again the array of positions. Same thing that we used there, and this is the algorithm itself. Okay. Now I have not done anything except just copied down what was written here. Okay, and then again I append this x to a vector, to an array, this x dot, which is our velocity, to an array, and then I update these two. It is basically the same equation, but we are doing everything twice. So here you will see 3 statements, here you will see 6 statements. That is it. That is all that we are doing. And we will run this. Okay, now you can see this is pretty much what we hope for. That is, we know it is a sinusoid. The solution to SHM is a sinusoid, and that is pretty much what we are getting, but not exactly, as you can see. If you look closely, there will be a difference, and we will and I will tell you why that difference is there in some time. And here you can see the phase space graph. Now, if you try to relate velocity and position in SHM, you will find that they form an ellipse. It's not forming an ellipse. Okay, the position as time is going, the position is spiraling inwards. Now let's do one thing. Let's run this again with a higher time step. And this is not SHM. You can see very clearly this is not SHM. The solution is diverging. Solution is increasing again and again and again. Okay, and that is precisely what we do not want from a numerical method. We want it to be exact. We don't want this to happen. And similarly, you can see this phase space, it is spiraling towards the origin. This basically tells your energy. If the energy we want the energy to be conserved, because in SHM energy is conserved, and but the energy is constantly going towards 0. No, wait, the energy itself is not going towards 0. Basically, this momentum position graph is spiraling towards 0. The energy, the position, this thing is continuously just increasing. Okay. Now, why is that? Why is this happening? Anybody, any idea?
Because it's the motion of the pendulum, it's getting damped.
No, I have not put. I can model damping. I can very easily model, and this is not damping. Don't think this is damping. This is actually quite the opposite of damping. Okay, in damping, these oscillations
completely.
Yeah, exactly. In damping, oscillations will go down. They will not keep increasing. There is nothing in the in entirety of physics, okay, which should keep increasing like this. Systems tend to stability. Potential energies decrease. Okay, unless a system is forced to increase, it will not increase. Entropies, entropy is supposed to be positive in the universe, right? So I said a lot of statements that seem very unrelated. I apologize for that. But basically, everything relates to the fact that systems must stabilize. Okay, what do you mean by stability? I mean, they must, they must either tend to 0 because of damping, as you said, or external disturbance or something, or they must, what do you call it? They must be static. They must not change their own, this thing. The reason why this is happening is because our algorithm does not work. Simple reason, our algorithm is bad. Why is it bad? Because we are treating these equations are not separate. These equations are the one and the same, but we are treating them as two separate equations. That should not happen. That is not that great. And why and how do we not treat them as separate equations? By taking a page out of the uh, first order linear ODE algorithm that we wrote. What is the basic of it? We calculate x0, and from that we have x0, we calculate x1, we calculate x2, and similarly it goes. So why don't we do the same thing here? Why don't we, this is our naive algorithm, and we want improved. What will be an improved algorithm? Okay, what will be an improved algorithm? An improved algorithm will be, I'm calculating xn plus 1 and I want to calculate Vn plus 1. Okay, Vn minus h omega squared xn. But instead of xn, since I already have xn plus 1, why not just put it here? Why not use that to calculate this? That should make my velocity much more accurate. And you will see that with this one small change that we have made, it changes everything. Okay, this is our improved algorithm, and you will see that the whole algorithm is exactly the same. Okay, let's reduce the step size for now. Okay, The whole algorithm is exactly the same, except for the fact that here we have x0, x1, and here we have x0. That is, here we are using the same x as the previous iteration, while here we are using the newly calculated x. Now let's run this cell. Now you will see a perfect sinusoid curve. Here you will see a perfect ellipse. What if I increase the time step? If I increase the number of iterations. Oh, that's too many iterations considering the time step. Wait, let me increase the time step. Okay, yeah, now you can see the system is static. But static means it is oscillating up and down at the same frequency, at the same amplitude, and it does not change in time. Okay, similarly, it is going round and round in the same ellipse along different positions in its state space. And that is precisely what we want it to do. Okay, so we can successfully conclude that this algorithm works much better. And this algorithm has a name. It is called Euler symplectic method. Why symplectic? That's not exactly that I will not explain, because that is not in the scope of the word itself, is not in the scope of this workshop. But it has something to do with Hamiltonian mechanics if you are interested. I will put it down here, Hamiltonian mechanics. There, instead of position and velocity, you use position and momentum, since our Hamiltonian mechanics is defined in terms of position and momentum. And in fact, the entire Hamiltonian mechanics is defined as this, as a system of linear differential equations in momentum and position. That, if you're interested in, you can go and look it up. Yeah, this is the symplectic method. Now let's look at one small improvement over what we want to do. How we can improve it, how we can someone was talking about run times on the WhatsApp group. Now I want to talk about how to improve our runtime. Before we do that, I'm going to just stop and see. I think I've gone on for too long without doubts, so if there's any doubts, you guys can just let me know right now. I'll put it in the WhatsApp group. I'll check that. Feel free to unmute and ask also. Okay, since there are no doubts, I'll proceed. Okay. Now let's see how to improve on the runtime of our algorithm. We are going to use something called vectorization. Now, vectorization is a very useful method, not just in numerical methods, for any area of physics or computer science. When we are in any area of physics or computer science, or anything where we need to make a lot of calculations, where we need to make bunch of calculations that look similar. Okay, and okay, so if you suppose, let's talk about in terms of computer science. We saw arrays yesterday, right? So if I have an array like this of some a1, a2, a3, an elements. Similarly, I have another array of b1, b2, b3, bn elements. Okay, and I want to add these two arrays. What's one method? One method is for I in range n. some C. I will declare some C array that will be C dot append AI plus BI. Okay, so this is just pseudocode that I've written. It's not proper Python code. Anyways, so I can write this. Okay, but what is this code doing? It is accessing the element of both the arrays at every single place, and it is running n times. That means the larger the array is, that larger my runtime will be. And for this sort of operation, my runtime becomes O of n. I do not want that for such a simple operation. O of n is a horrible runtime. What can I do? Now most languages these days, and Python definitely provides you simpler options. You have these two arrays. Okay, suppose you have a NumPy array of something like this: A1, A2, AN, and you have another NumPy array of B1, B2, Vn. I'm putting the brackets this way because that's how they put it in NumPy. Actually, they put it something like this, but I'm just to leave that out. Anyways, so if you can just do A plus B. This will give you a new array. That is it. That is all you need to do. And for this, the runtime is O of 1. It runs in constant time. Okay. So this is very useful for us because we if you want to make a lot of vector lot of equations that we have which we are doing similar operations on, it becomes very easy. Now how do I apply it to my system? Now let's forget our improved algorithm. Let's look at a naive algorithm for 1 second. What was our naive algorithm? This is a naive algorithm. Now how can we vectorize this? Now this is a general thing in mathematics. This is and you will see this being used in various areas such as if you're into management, maybe operations research, or if you are into signal processing, you'll see a lot of this happening in control systems and stuff. So this sort of an operation. So I will put it in one vector. Okay, and I will put this thing in one vector. Vn minus h omega squared xn. Please pardon my handwriting. If you do not understand anything, you can confirm from me. Okay, or I'll just put it in a better way. That's more convenient, I think. Yeah. So this is and you can see that both of these expressions are a linear expression, a linear combination of xn and vn. And whenever we have this kind of a linear system of linear combinations, we can always break that up into a matrix multiplying a vector. Something like this. Now what is this matrix? We can actually very easily figure that out. So here it is 1, this is h, this is 1, and this is minus h omega squared. So okay, so this becomes our this becomes our system. Okay, and this is deceptively looks very good, this system. Okay, you can actually rather than just doing it with this, you can also do it directly from the equations themselves. How this also might prove very useful to you, though I'm not going to cover how much useful this is in detail. So you have this kind of a system. You can put it like this: d by dt of xv Okay, a matrix, and again xv. Now, and you can figure it out. Here the x is 0, v is 1, x is minus omega squared, v is 0. From this you have figured out the matrix. So this xv vector, let's scroll down a little bit. I'm going to call this as this boldface x vector. I'll put a vector sign over it to make it clear. Into a times this matrix x. Okay, and where x vector is xv. Now, what does this represent? This equation that this vectorized equation that we've come up with for this differential equation, it extremely represents our first equation that we saw. Okay, that is the first order linear ODE. In fact, any linear ODE, no matter what the order, okay, it can be expressed like this. Any linear ODE, it can be expressed as in this form. Now the length of the vector and the size of the matrix will change, but that can be, but this is a very powerful tool, because then any linear ODE I can just discretize like this, minus a times xn. Wait, a h times xn. Any linear ODE just became extremely simple to solve. Okay. Now the thing is, you just need to form these vectors. Okay. One other great aspect of solving it in this form, okay, which is also called its state space form, is that you can get this you can get information from this matrix A. Okay, so okay, forget this matrix. This is basically your identity plus this thing. Anyways, never mind that. Okay, let's look at this matrix. Okay, this matrix gives us a lot of information about the system. Matrix A is 0, 1, minus omega squared, 0. Okay. And what information does this give us about the system? Okay. This, if we add the whole, take xn in common, and I plus h a times x xn. Okay. We multiply this. We this whole matrix will become 1 what 1. This is 0. So this will become h. This will become minus h omega squared. This will again become 1. Okay, I think I made a mistake here. This should be flipped. One second, I'll correct it. Yeah, this should be flipped. Okay. This is your matrix I plus HN. And this matrix will precisely tell you why this algorithm did not work and will never work. If you take the determinant of this, your determinant comes out to be determinant of I plus HA. This comes out to be 1 plus h squared omega squared. Sorry. Yeah. And this thing is not a good thing. This is not 1. Why do I want it to be 1? Because as you know, the determinants, when it comes to vectors and matrices, determinants tell you the area. Okay, that is given that is given by the that is made by the parallelogram of the vectors that that were made by the parallelogram of the column vectors of the 2 cross 2 matrix. So this, if we take this as a vector, we take this as a vector, the parallelogram that will be formed would be, would have this area. That is what a determinant actually gives. Okay. If you don't know that, that's fine completely. You don't need to really know that for, to start working with this. But if you want to get to the theoretical aspect of it, I would really suggest going through the books that I put in, the repository. I've linked it there. The second book especially, it's really good. It tells you about the basics of everything. Okay, so this is not 1, and this mean, and in fact this is positive, and this is what tells us this is that why our solution kept increasing. Okay, but so now if I try to find it, okay, that I will do later. First I want to show you, okay, or rather let's do this thing and we will look at the code at the end. Okay, so if I find it for our new algorithm, xn plus 1 is equals to xn plus h times vn. Vn plus 1 is equals to Vn minus h omega squared times xn plus 1. This I can replace minus h omega squared. Xn plus 1 I can replace from above as xn plus h times Vn. And Vn plus 1 then becomes 1 plus 1 minus h square omega square times Vn minus h omega squared times xn. Okay. Now let's now if we look at this matrix that will be formed here, 1 minus h omega squared minus h omega squared 1 minus h square omega squared. 1 second. I'm making some mistake here. Okay, wait, sorry, this is my bad. We look at this equation and we look at this equation. Okay, yeah. Then it settles. This becomes h, this becomes 1, this becomes h, this becomes minus h omega squared, and this becomes 1 minus h squared omega squared. Okay, and our vector x, this is just xv. Okay, and if you try to find the determinant of this matrix now, it will come out to be 1. And that is what tells us why our second algorithm works so well, because it is something we call an area preserving method. Okay, an area preserving method will always give you better results than a non-area preserving method. Okay, now it preserves area perfectly in terms of linear systems, but we will see tomorrow that even when our system is non-linear, it will give wonderful results. Okay, and that I cannot derive and show you like this, rigorously. That is some heuristic. You will have to take a heuristic feel of why it works, but it works wonderfully. Okay, now coming back to vectorization. Okay. Now, since we have we have vectorized it like this, we can take a look at, yeah. Okay, this is the vectorized naive algorithm. Okay, and everything else is same. Here, what I've done is rather than having an x and a v different arrays, I've given initial conditions to both, in one array. So this gives me my initial position to be 1 and my initial velocity to be 0. Okay, and I will just put this vector in this x array. Okay, and this is my A, as you can see here. Yeah, this is my A array, 0 1 minus omega squared 0. Okay, this will give me a 2 cross 2 array, and again this then reduces to 3 statements because I've vectorized it, and Okay, yeah, I also need to declare an identity matrix like this, since one will not work. But yeah, so you can declare an identity like np like this, np.identity2. It will give you a 2 cross 2 identity matrix like I showed you yesterday. Okay. Now we can do the exact same thing that we did for our linear system, like a linear ODE. Okay, the same thing, except this time this x1 is not of dimension, it is not just a number, it is a vector of dimension 2. Okay, but that does not matter to the computer. Okay, the NumPy library is made in such a way that it will still give it process it in O1 time. Okay, now we can plot the graph. This x0, the first this thing will give me positions, and x1 will give me velocities. Okay, and you can see here now that this again gives me my naive algorithm, albeit a little better. It is the same time step and the same iteration, but it is giving me a little better result. And that is the basically the power of vectorization. Even though the algorithm itself is wrong, vectorization makes it a little bit more precise. Now, why you can go and research that has to do with more computer science and physics really, and I want you to leave this as an exercise for you to find the algorithm for the find the improved algorithm in a vectorized form. Okay, so here we have our naive algorithm, we have a vectorized naive algorithm, and we have our improved algorithm. I want you to find the vectorized improved algorithm, and for that I have given you the hint right here. Okay. This covers our session, the theory part of a session for today. If there are any doubts, I will take them now. Otherwise, we can continue from tomorrow. Any doubts, guys? You can put them in the WhatsApp chat also if you are feeling shy. Okay, if there are no doubts, yeah.
Hello. Just wanted to ask, are there any books or videos that you would recommend for us to understand this subject more, or rather dwell on this?
Books, I've linked them in the GitHub repo. The link is in the WhatsApp group description. It's on the, I've linked them in the README. I've also linked documentation for Python if you want to explore that further too. Other than that, videos, again, since this is a purely theoretical subject, not many videos will be there. But books, definitely, if you want, I can give you 5-6 really good books on the whole subject.
Yeah,
I would first I would tell you to follow the ones that are linked in the README. If you're done going through their basics, then you can contact me.
Okay, thank you.
If there are no doubts, you guys can leave. I'll stay here. I'll stick around for 5 more minutes in case anybody wants to ask any doubts.